What's up guys, my name is Ace, and when it comes to the new SMG that was added with the Nightfall update in Battlefield 6, even 2 weeks later, you still can't unlock this gun fully unless you pay real money or use your credits, which cost real money. And I do have an issue with how they've set this particular unlock model up, so I wanted to discuss that and share my feedback when it comes to that. And then toward the end of the video, I also wanted to share at least a partial workaround that allows you to use locked guns on your loadouts without having to actually unlock the base gun. And I know many people are already aware of this, but there's also tons of people that aren't aware of that. But in either case, let's dive into the issue that I've got here when it comes to unlocking the CZ3A1. And I know I'm a little bit late on this, and the simple reason behind that is, full disclosure, I just bought the CZ3A1 with credits immediately when the update hit. Now, obviously, my situation is very different from the average player out there because I make money covering the guns in this game, and therefore, of course, it's a no-brainer for me to put a little bit of money up front so I can make a lot more money back from that. But with this video, I'm more so trying to look out for the general player base that doesn't make money playing this game. And so let's dive deeper into the issue. As I said, at this point, even though we're in the second week of this Nightfall event, it is still impossible to unlock this new SMG unless you spend credits to skip tiers. And so for anybody that isn't spending any additional money on the game, they won't gain access to this gun until the third week of the event. And for anybody that isn't aware, this is unlocked through a bonus path in the Battle Pass. And the only way to progress through this is by completing the base challenges and the weekly challenges that award bonus points. And doing the math on this, you need 110 total points in order to complete this and therefore unlock the CZ3A1. And all of the base Nightfall challenges award 35 points, and then each set of weekly challenges will award up to 35 points as well. So at this point, 2 weeks in, the maximum amount of points you can earn is 105. Which is just 5 points short of finishing that off and unlocking that gun, and that's why you'll have to wait till next week's challenges to unlock this or spend some credits. And obviously this is an intentional setup. They're going for the system of pay to get it now or wait and don't pay and you can still get it, but you're gonna get it later than the others. And by getting you right up close to the point where you've almost got it unlocked, but now you gotta wait another week for those challenges, it's obviously very enticing to just spend a little bit of money or spend a few credits that you've got in order to skip that last tier or the last couple tiers that you might have and get the gun now rather than waiting another week. And to be clear, when it comes to systems like this, I'm actually totally fine with them making their post-launch revenue. I think that's important for a live service game to continue live service support, although they did also just lay off a bunch of employees, but that's a separate topic entirely. In general, though, there are far worse systems that they could be using to make this post-launch revenue, like supply drops, for instance, or just making things straight up pay to win, where the only way to get new gameplay items is to pay for them outright. So having this pay to get it now, grind to get it later sort of a system is generally what's accepted in the industry as being the standard these days for live service games, and I'm fine with systems like that as long as the path to earn the items without having to spend money is reasonable. And of course, everybody's definition of reasonable will vary when it comes to this, and for some people watching this video, I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of comments saying this current system is totally reasonable, where if you don't spend money, you have to wait 3 weeks in order to unlock and use the gun. And that's fair enough, you're entitled to that opinion. Again, I think there are far worse systems out there. I don't think this is like the worst part of the game or anything, but it is a topic I still wanted to bring up here. But the main reason I disagree with this being a reasonable system in its current state is the time-gated nature of this. There isn't just a pure, straight, linear grind where you put the time and effort into the game and you get the item out of that. Instead, you can only progress a certain amount each week, and once you reach that limit for the week, any playtime or progression after that is irrelevant when it comes to your progress toward unlocking that item that you want to unlock. And this means even the most dedicated players that invest an ungodly amount of time into the game, if they don't spend any credits, they're going to have to wait just as long as the more casual players that maybe just hop on once a week to complete their weekly challenges and that's all they play for the week. And having a system like this can obviously feel very unrewarding for the people that put a lot of time into the game, because it feels like you just have to log in and do your chores for the week, and then any playtime after that is pointless toward getting the item that you're actually wanting to get and the item that you're working toward. So if that's your new primary goal and the thing that you're really looking forward to and you're excited to get and use in the game, too bad, you gotta wait till next week before you can make any more progress toward that, and then you can do your new chores to then work toward it again. And in this case, you're gonna have to do it a third time and wait for the third week's challenges before you can actually unlock and use that item. So for me, it's the time gate that is the issue. Without a time gate, it's much more rewarding and exciting to have just a straight path where you put the time in, you put the effort in, and that'll be directly correlated to how long it's going to take you to get that item and use it. This means every minute of playtime that you're putting into the game, from the moment that event starts to the moment you unlock it, every moment of your gameplay time is contributing toward that, and therefore you always feel like you're making progress, you're working towards something, and that makes the path to earning that item far more interesting and exciting and engaging as well. Now with this, I do want to be clear, I'm not necessarily asking for like just a quick and easy grind so everybody, even the really casual players, have this gun unlocked the first day of the event or even the first few days of the event. I have no issue with making it a bit of a grind and make it actually take some real playtime to get to that item. And I think there's actually some benefit in that as well. It gets people engaged with the game again and excited to play as they're working toward that goal. And then once they get to that goal, you're going to get more playtime out of them because now they've got the item and they're going to want to use that and level it up as well. So for me, I think the ideal way to handle this, at least in my eyes, is to still have the same sort of setup that they've got. So you've got the base challenges, the weekly challenges, and they all contribute toward that path. And that can even be the bulk of your progression toward that end goal, which in this case is the CZ3A1. But then I think on top of that, they should be awarding bonus points for that, for either reaching XP milestones or honestly, even if it were just time played milestones. So like if you put X amount of time in, you get a credit. I personally lean toward it being more XP based. So that means if you're very good at the game, then you're able to progress faster. It's nice to be rewarded for the skills that you have in the game. But even if it were just rewarded on a time played basis, I still think that would be better than the current system that we've got. And obviously, it would be fine to tweak how many points you're getting via challenges versus this in order to find that sweet spot so you're still ensuring that there's a reasonable amount of a grind to get to that item, and it's not way too fast or way too slow. But I think there's definitely a sweet spot to be found there. And the core of this for me is time is money. And so, for those that invest an insane amount of time into the game, these are the most dedicated and loyal players. I feel they should be rewarded for what they're putting into the game. And it's important to keep those players as happy and engaged with the gameplay loop itself, rather than trying to squeeze every penny out of them. Instead, I think the real target here should be the more casual players that still play regularly, but on a much more casual basis. They maybe only have a few hours here or there throughout a week to play. For those players, those are the ones that will often be weighing the pros and cons of maybe spending a little bit of money to save several hours of grinding because they don't have those extra several hours to grind, but they want to get that new gun. So those players would be a lot more likely to be totally happy to spend some credits to get that gun early, or if not, they're just going to have to wait a few weeks to get those weekly challenges done to get the gun unlocked, and I think that's reasonable as well. I feel that sort of balance is the sweet spot. I think there should always be a direct path that's not time-gated to unlock any new gameplay item, so it doesn't feel like you have to log in weekly to do your chores, and then once your chores are done, that's it. That's all you can do for the week. You have to wait for the next week to make any sort of progress. I think that's just a weak system that creates an unnecessary amount of frustration in the community. Now, thankfully with this system, it's not quite as bad because of the workaround that I'm going to be sharing here. Again, for some people, this is just common knowledge. They've known about this since the game launched. But it is something that I know many people are still unaware of, so I wanted to make sure I was sharing that today. But the way things work in this game, which you've probably noticed while leveling up guns, is once you reach level 10 for a gun, you will get the Warfighter Blueprint. And it turns out you can still unlock that Warfighter Blueprint without unlocking the base version of the gun, as long as you still manage to make it to level 10 with that gun. Which, by the way, is much more reasonable now after the change to the XP curves. Those first 10 levels are so much easier than they were before. In fact, the first game I played with the CZ3A1, I went from level 1 to level 11 in just one game. And that's without double XP active. So it's very achievable to get these 10 levels, but how do you do that if you don't have the base gun unlocked? Well, for the standard multiplayer, it's as simple as picking up loadouts and trying to get a CZ3A1, which is obviously a bit hit or miss. At least I've seen a fair number of people using these. Another thing you can do is just pay attention to the kill feed, and if you notice a particular teammate is getting kills with a CZ3, you can follow them around until they die and then pick up their loadout. That's maybe a little bit scummy, especially if you're playing the support role and you could have revived them, but it's one method at least. Now, a much more consistent method of this is if you happen to have a friend that already has the CZ3, they can help you out with that by just spawning in with their CZ3 loadout and then redeploying. Then you can pick up their loadout off the ground when they redeploy, and you could do that every single life if your friend is willing to help out with that. Now, alternatively, I don't really play RedSec at all, but from what I've been hearing in the game's current state, you can get this gun out of just the standard crates that you find around the map, and therefore that's another method of progressing the CZ3 is going into RedSec, finding it in the ground loot, and then using that as your gun to level it up there. And again, those first 10 levels are very reasonable, and once you complete that, you will gain access to the Warfighter Blueprint that you can now use on your own loadouts, and then you can continue progressing that all the way up to level 50 if you wanted to. But the problem here, and the reason this is only a partial workaround, is if you don't have the base gun unlocked, you are unable to edit the attachments on that Warfighter build. So you're stuck with those default attachments. And that's obviously not ideal. You're not going to get the most out of the gun. You'll just be able to use it and progress it. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. As I said, just wanted to share some feedback on this. It's not the biggest issue in the game or anything. I definitely don't want to make this out to be a much bigger issue than it is. It's just an area where I feel there is room for improvement. And again, I do think they're introducing some unnecessary frustration here, trying to squeeze out every penny they can, rather than leaning more in the direction of keeping their current players happy and preventing even more players from burning out and getting frustrated with the game, which at this point, I think is more important to be focusing on keeping those players around than squeezing out every last cent. Now, of course, these are just my opinions on this topic, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it in those comments down below. Are you guys totally fine with having a time-gated system like this, so you literally can't unlock a new gun, for instance, until 3 weeks after an event launches, unless you spend money? Or would you prefer a system like I suggested where there's always at least a path to continue your progression beyond just your time-gated weekly challenges, so players at least have the potential to put a ton of time in to get that item sooner? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.